Okay, off you go.
Okay, so Tim, very nice to meet you. Do you want to let me know why you've come here to see me?
Yeah, well, I'm looking for a job and I'm finding it hard to get interviews at the moment and finding it hard to get any responses actually. So just thought maybe I could talk about this and work through some things that I might be doing wrong or conducting myself wrong or anything really to get some ideas how I could move that forward.
Yep, of course. And what area do you work in?
I work in recruitment, but I work in recruitment predominantly internal recruitment, so I do a lot of work helping companies do their own recruitment, and some work as an agent as such or a headhunter.
And what steps have you actually taken? Are they the steps you usually take?
Yeah, the normal things, sort of network, friends, ex-work colleagues, that sort of thing, and then agencies and job ads, the three sort of avenues that are out there.
And what sort of responses have you had from what you've put out so far?
Pretty much nothing. So some responses, but responses to say I haven't got anything at the moment, this isn't happening, that isn't happening. And to some extent there's a bit of a downturn at the moment, but otherwise just worryingly not getting interviews.
So if from the responses you've had, if that obviously isn't working for you, how have you been thinking how you can extend your search, extend your inquiry, what other avenues?
Yeah, looking at coaching, for instance. As another sort of arrow in the quiver of similar of similar things, which recruiting and headhunting are very similar. So yeah, but otherwise I think it is an industry that's I've had some very senior roles, and I don't mind doing hands-on more junior work, but I think a lot of people see my CV and see some of the things I've done and think, oh well, he's no way he'll do this. I won't call him about that. So they don't, where I'm quite happy being hands-on. I don't need to be managing hundreds of people and having a big job with a big title and loads of money. So I think that's part of an issue, but I'm finding I'm not getting to have the conversations with people to be able to say, hey, I know I might have been on X £1,000 in the past and I might have been doing this job and that job, but I'm quite happy doing what you might perceive to be a much more junior job now. And it's difficult, in any industry actually, it's difficult to have those conversations because people are just reviewing CVs or they're looking at profiles, they're not having an interaction with you to be able to talk to you about those sorts of things.
And have you thought about doing consultation work with the experience you have in HR and recruitment, not HR recruitment?
And I guess that's where the coaching comes in. I do that sort of informally with friends and contacts and old colleagues and informally anyway, which is for nothing, which is one of the reasons I've started to think about let's start doing that and getting paid for it.
No, because as an aside, you've just described what's happened to me, and now if I'd had this conversation with you 6 months ago, I'd have felt completely different about the mess I'm in. Sorry, it probably shouldn't be filming that. It's really interesting. So it's across the board, everybody's being
and I think
hit.
it's different industries. All industries I think are similar, and I think there's an age thing as well. I really think there is. We have this perception that we're not going to be old in the workplace until we're getting into our sort of 60s, maybe late 50s or 60s. But there's a sudden dawning that you're 45, you're old, and particularly when you're quite happy doing jobs that are less responsibility than you've had in the past. And those jobs are more likely to go to people who are aspiring to those jobs than they are people who are quite happy to step back into those roles.
Yes.
I think it's an issue that's in the workforce. It's a labour sort of workforce issue in anyway. But it's not easy to work through.
Again, I'm not sure this is appropriate for my position as a coach, but because of the experience I had in the organisation I worked in, had we had someone like you who's able to really communicate about all of this without the sort of toxic shock of my ex-employers, it would have been amazing for us. Anyway, you've got so much experience, and just from the experiences I've had, there are so many people I know who've come out of education and are really around art and design who are, would be so sort of really need to hear all of this because they're feeling really targeted massively.
Yeah, I guess how do we how would we help ourselves?
Yeah.
And how would we help other people?
Yeah.
In
There's a
these
huge need
spaces.
for real communication across the board within employment. As I think as you move through your 40s into your 50s, it's becoming an epidemic of need. I think.
And
from
it's
what I can
more so
hear.
in this country. I find other cultures it's less so.
Yeah.
Other countries and other cultures, and it's less so, and they're quite happy to have older people doing perhaps again more junior
Yes.
jobs or perceived
Yeah.
more junior jobs. But we have this hierarchical thinking
Yes.
in this country, whereas you can only be going up, you can't be going back down at any sort of hierarchy, whether it be an earnings hierarchy or a grading hierarchy. And it needs to be broken.
But within education, it's really interesting because you've got all of this experience, and people in senior management in education or in my experience, had very limited experience of the real world outside of their education bubble, and to get this sort of information from outside of that is really like. Just for me, I'm supposed to be the coach. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
really
and I've seen
helpful.
the same. I've seen what you've just described. I've got a friend who worked in banking and worked in pretty much the same bank, Midlands Bank, which became HSBC for 27 years, and was made redundant and was completely unemployable because he only knew one thing, very old-fashioned, very conservative. He was in a similar position. He was only 53, I think, and hasn't worked since.
There's a massive need for education around what work, the lifespan of work, what that actually means, the longevity of your place within the workplace and how that can change. That people really need to understand that and have much more sort of clarity about that, because people are there's still this notion that you're going to hang on to the same job and hopefully you'll just get through to your sort of 60s. That's sort of been decimated.
Yeah, and that we have a right to a job. I think we have a subconscious thing that we have a right to a job. We're a Western economy, a healthy economy, one of the wealthiest countries in the world. We have a God-given right to have a job till we retire. And it's absolutely not the case.
But the thing that is really clear to me is that you have so much knowledge and experience, and it's for how do you think it can be possible for you, through this coaching, possibly to actually use that to possibly educate, inform other people, be working with other people.
Do you think some of the things Andreas mentioned about, I can't remember the exact terminology, but about wallowing in a certain state of mind, and that can actually inhibit you breaking out of that state of mind? And I feel sometimes I could be, I'm not sure, but I could be approaching that sort of state of mind, and how do we break that state of mind down and try and look at things afresh?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I totally agree, and also just from the last institution I worked at, we used to describe it as like being in a dysfunctional relationship, but we were all moaning like mad about it and really getting off on it. So that whole thing is so alive and kicking out there. It's really, really thriving. Yeah.
It's the unhappy spouse who tells their friends.
Absolutely, but does nothing about it. Yeah, definitely. No, it's really interesting. But also, again, I think, and again, something that was mentioned earlier, this whole notion of change and this constant use of the word change, which is used as a sort of panacea to basically say we're going to do what we like, when we like, and what you've created and what you've established doesn't really mean a thing. And without serious reflection on what's actually in place and what's been achieved. So the waste of experience, of things that actually work, the destruction within that is really difficult.
Yeah, and do you think the flip side of that too is we know about change, and we know our generation has to be more willing to change, and that it's going to happen more often, but it doesn't necessarily prepare us for it?
No, not at all.
Or make us adaptable
we think
when
it's
the
something
time
that
comes.
happens to someone else, not us. Yeah, we just want to keep ourselves safe. The threat is so immense. It's such a threatening thing. Yeah, your livelihood, everything you're responsible for, and then there's all of the sort of whole thing of the status you've achieved, your education, all of that stuff. It's so hard to let go. Yeah, definitely. But it's a real relief when you can let go of it, but you've somehow got to get out of the quagmire of thinking, shit, what am I going to do, and create something else. Yeah, definitely. While you've got the energy to do it.
So I think this might stretch to a couple more sessions, Councillor.
Jesus, man, I think this is about a 10-year bloody...
Okay, shall I go over and out?
Yeah.
Very good.
That's 10 years. That's at least 10 years.